Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I am your co-host, JP John Poz from the Two-Man Power Trip. Of course, joining me, the financial wrestling genius himself, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
Hey, John, I'm doing well. Surprisingly action-packed with news. Sometimes, as we've talked about before, middle of the summer, you think it's quiet, people on vacation, and suddenly, it just builds and builds. And I think I have about 35 pages of notes today.
A lot of stuff to talk about, and it's very interesting kind of to start off because we've talked about Tubi before, but I mean, we've really never started off the show with Tubi. But this is very, very interesting, obviously, from Fightful, from Sean Rossett, but what's going on with Tubi and maybe Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yeah, so just a little bit of a tidbit shared by SRS, a GCW wrestler from Fightful. Fox streaming platform Tubi has shown interest in investing in a wrestling product on its platform. Details are few and far between, but we're told that the discussions haven't been with an active company as opposed to wanting to try out something new from scratch. So a lot to unpack here. So firstly, starting something from scratch. So obviously Tubi is owned by Fox. And I think some of the strategies that media companies are going to now is that, especially with sports rights or sports-like rights, if you own it or you own a piece of it, maybe you have a little bit of leverage or can even, keep it there as long as you want it. I believe Fox owns a piece of the UFL. It's rumored, of course, that WBD has a stake in AEW. So that makes sense. But on the other side of the coin, that's a lot to start up a pro wrestling company. Obviously, Tubi, again, is part of a company that can scale and they can do it, but it just seems like a big way to go. So if they were going to start up from scratch, you'd have to think about who can run such a company. And of course, you can always try executives from other forms of entertainment or sports or fight sports, whatever it may be. But usually you try to look towards that industry already, or people that want to start up their own. So no names have been attached to this at all yet, but just thinking about who might want to do it or co-invest in it. So Freddie Prinze Jr. has been talking about it for a long time. In terms of wrestling executives or people that have been in positions of power before, you have Scott D'Amore, Lou DeAngeli, Eric Bischoff, John Vince Russo.
Yeah.
But it just seems like a lot. And what I've noticed with big media companies is at the end of the day, they want to work with big companies themselves. So I think, depending on the contracts that WWE is under, we've talked about this WWE NXT thing, the NXT TNA, TNA, right? That's the combination that they've been using.
Yep.
Right. If NXT is already committed to the CW and stream on Netflix eventually, is there a window if WWE works with TNA to sort of get other sort of rights? Because that would be an interesting approach. I think it's rather than a main event type of program where it's fourth rate, here you sort of have a unique, you can sort of put in unique combinations. Who else can they work with? TNA outright, potentially. TNA has talked about that they're open to and they'd like to do deals not just on their own Anthem platforms. Tony Khan hasn't really looked around for other platforms for Ring of Honor, but depending on how its deals work out for AEW and WBD, maybe that could be something to look at. there's a whole issue with MLW where they were apparently going to announce this big deal with Tubi, and then allegedly Stephanie McMahon called and got that squash, and obviously that led to a lawsuit where it was reported ultimately that MLW got $20 million, simplifying that, but some of the larger touch points of that. I think like in New Japan would be like, I don't think it'd be a great fit, or AAA or CMLL. I think it has to be like, Tubi is like very mainstream, consumable content. So even though we love the alternatives, I think it has to be like a type of product that feels very mainstream. Now, let's say they were going to try to build up their own thing. I don't know, like, and we've talked about this before, like in terms of investor money, like at certain points, there's been different people on the market, right? Like, who's out there, right? Batista is all in on the movies, and he has a different body type now. I don't think he considered pro wrestling, maybe one match. Ronda Rousey is expecting her second child, and even reflecting that in her forthcoming comic book. She said she wants to have a lot of children, so she wouldn't be on the market. Who else? Are there other names out there, John, that like if you were going to just be like, okay, free agents, I guess Bill Goldberg, which I would enjoy. Sting's retired. I mean, he's probably still under an AEW contract of some kind. I don't think now is the right time to get some big name talent in, and even to be like, right, like Fast. There's a lot of viewership in it right now, and we'll go over some of those numbers, but I don't know if there's the names necessarily. How would you handle it, John?
Yeah, that I'm not sure of, because I don't think with AEW, being what they are, I feel like they took all the names that you'd possibly would want or could want for that. So yeah, that's going to be real tough to kind of get something together. I don't know if it would be an existing company or not, but just very, very, to me, interesting, because man, there's not a lot of talent out there to scoop up. And Tubi obviously is a huge, huge network, and they have plenty of money to do it, but I just don't think there's enough talent out there.
So one big name that I neglected to mention, and not starting rumors, there's nothing to it in terms of being attached at the moment. In any case, Vince McMahon, right? Like, would he want to come back for revenge, and would this give him a platform? But I put out a poll on X. Not a huge amount of responses, so I'm not claiming it's like indicative of pro wrestling fans overall, but of those who responded, about 50% were for Freddie Prinze Jr., 28% thought NXT TNA, 14% Scott D'Amore, and 9.5% Vince McMahon, with, I think, MLW as one write-in. So having some fun with it at first. And again, they could go like in a totally different way of just bringing in different executives who they feel could run wrestling, and maybe the upper chain isn't wrestling people, but then you have somebody that knows their wrestling to obviously scout it out and produce the show and so on. But often we think about like Fast and Tubi and so on, like it's not a big thing, but just looking at some of the numbers. So this was from last year, an infographic that Tubi put out. Tubi surpasses 74 million monthly active users. It's the #1 AVOD player and most watched free ad-supported TV streaming service in the U.S. 1.4% of total TV viewing time overall. So it's meaning like when people watch television, they stream Netflix, YouTube, whatever it may be, 1.4% of that time is Tubi. 4 billion streaming hours in the first half of 2023. That's like a little suspect when you just add up all the hours. It's hard to compare to other things. And they have 200,000 movies and TV episodes, nearly 200 Tubi originals, and 250 fast channels. So what is that? Is that 0.1%? 200 into 200,000? 2 into 200, so maybe 1%. So obviously not a lot of original content yet, but they're aiming towards that. Just some more facts, and then some of them are newer facts, so if one contradicts the other. But Tubi is now watched as much as a top 5 cable network. An audience continues to embrace our digital-first, 100% free streaming experience, said Anjali Sood, newly appointed CEO at the time. The platform continues to scale with 47% growth in ad revenue, 65% growth in total viewing time, Q4 over Q4, and we are executing an ambitious strategy to define the next generation of entertainment through our diverse content, passionate audience, and innovative tech platform. Now, then they said has 80 million active average users, up from 67 million a year ago. Parent company Fox said with a 36% year-over-year uptick in platform usage, driving revenue up more than 22%. That's in the face of a down fiscal Q3 for Fox's broader implications and so on. So lots of Tubi facts that you can look into. I think one of the things that really stood out, I forgot if it was Rupert Murdoch or another top executive who ran Fox, was like predicting that in a few years Tubi will be bigger than Fox. I think in terms of revenue. Hopefully I'm not misspeaking, but I just remember that from a couple of years ago where it was just like stunning that they saw so much in Tubi. So even though it's just like a part of the landscape now, it's the biggest dog in the yard in terms of where they play, but I think it'll keep becoming like a bigger part of the media landscape. So something to watch.
Now, as far as TNA is concerned, I know there's a lot of TNA news to discuss as well.
So firstly, one of the strengths of Anthem, which we've talked about a number of times, is their ability to distribute not only through streaming platforms where they're very wide in that way, but they have international distribution as well. Less so for TNA than in years past, but still a strength of theirs. So an existing relationship that they have is Warner Brothers Discovery's Eurosport India, which of course already airs AEW and I believe continues to air New Japan, and years ago had Ring of Honor as well. So TNA's been on there for a while, so this is going to be expanding their relationship. Anthem said its TNA Wrestling has expanded its relationship under Eurosport India. Under an exclusive multi-year agreement, Eurosport India will carry hundreds of hours of content, including original series, pay-per-view, and top matches that are in India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Earlier this year, Eurosport agreed to carry 8 new TNA Plus Presents specials a year, plus new episodes of the Hindi language TNA Impact highlight series, Pewani Patak. This expanded deal is a testament to how powerfully TNA has resonated with audiences throughout India and its subcontinent, said Ariel Schnerer, Senior VP. WWE clearly recognizes the value that TNA brings to the Eurosport India platform, and we are proud to continue our successful partnership with them. The new deal includes the weekly flagship series TNA Impact and pay-per-view, such as Bound for Glory and Slammiversary. Other highlights include access to legacy series such as Epics, Greatest Matches, Legends, British Boot Camp, and TNA Unfinished Business. Pro wrestling has been an integral part of childhood in India, creating a nostalgic connection for many. Cultivating this connection has been key to the growth of Eurosport's passionate fan base, said Ruchir Jan, head of distribution in sports South Asia. The collaboration underscores our commitment to delivering top-tier sports entertainment, and we look forward to providing our thrill-loving audience with exceptional wrestling experiences through this partnership. So that's one thing. Next, okay, actually, before we move on, Warner Bros. Discovery began broadcasting curated TNA programming in the region in the first quarter of 2020. The promotion continues to resonate with its viewers in India and its subcontinent, and has firmly established itself as the #2 data-supported genre brand in India, amassing more than 2.5 million Facebook followers in the country. TNA's global reach has grown as well, with the promotion attracting over 4.4 million YouTube subscribers worldwide. Next, moving across to TNA in the UK. First of all, there's rumors now that TNA's flagship event, I believe, Bound for Glory, will resonate from the UK because people saw a promoter saying that Moose will be there in October for potential appearances and seminars and so on. So people are sort of connecting the dots. remember, like about a month ago, people were speculating that it was going to be in London, where TNA said that's going to be in a top 10 media market and somewhere that they haven't run a pay-per-view before. So connecting the dots there. But in some sad news, TNA Wrestling UK announced that they're deeply saddened to hear about the passing of Chris York, a leading UK promoter and director of SJM Concerts. Chris was a fundamental part of bringing TNA to the UK, our huge Wembley Arena shows and accompanying tours. I'm not sure, like, his role day to day or how long he's been doing it. Unfortunately, I'm just learning more about Chris. I hope to learn more about him in his life in the coming weeks, but I don't know if everything would already have been secured for holding a big pay-per-view in the UK, or if he wouldn't have been involved in that element. So of course, everyone's been talking about Slammiversary, and we have too. The big win in Montreal, that it was sold out, all that good stuff. Some TNA fans were getting a little bit like too excited, so like being like, we're back, and like posting pictures of like Slammiversary and then showing the AEW residency in Arlington, especially the first night, which was sold out, or pretty nearly that of 1,000 or 1,100 capacity, whatever it is, and be like, look, TNA is better than AEW and so on. So like people can manipulate information and data how they want. But for me, I like to look at the long-term trajectory, even what happens the next day. So we know that tapings can be difficult the next day to draw fans, and that was true even post Slammiversary. I would think that you would see some bump because people couldn't get some free tickets, and it was just like such a big presence with PCO, as we talked about, like the pretzel contests and all that, and the banners and all that sort of stuff. But looked like a small crowd. Somebody being positive, which was good. Wrote great crowd for the TNA taping, but you could see just that, it's basically the floor. A little bit of the risers on one side, the other side is blacked out, which you would expect. So that's that. But an interesting part about Slammiversary that we didn't talk about last time, that the Knockouts match was sponsored by the upcoming movie Detained. So at first I was looking, because we know that Anthem owns a distribution or production company related to movies. So I was like, is this in-house? But I don't believe so. I think it's another company. TNA Wrestling confirmed that the Knockouts World Championship match was sponsored by Detained from Quiver Distribution. Reigning Knockouts World Champion Jordan Grace put her title on the line against Ash by Elegance. Quiver is thrilled to partner with TNA Wrestling to promote our film Detained, starring Abby Cornish and Laz Alonso. Quiver Distribution co-president Barry Mayoritz. That sounds like I think the guy that used to run the UFC, like it sounds like a play off his name, but Bob Myritz, but different person. And Jeff Sackman. Sponsoring the Knockouts World Championship match as Slammiversary is a great way to introduce our film to an energized audience. Okay, so then there was the announcement of TNA's schedule for the rest of the year. One of the changes was Cleveland had been expected for September 13th and 14th, but it didn't go on sale. There was going to be 3 different cities that would go on sale the same day, 6 shows in total, the prime show and then a taping the following day usually. But then they moved it from Cleveland. I don't know what factored into that, but I think TNA is smart to move it from having a show in September. The market is already would be burned out from SummerSlam. You could already see like some difficulty that GCW is having that Friday night in attracting fans. Obviously, they're going against SmackDown, so that might be other issues. But I think running Cleveland so soon wouldn't have been smart. So what do they have? The show scheduled for September 13th and 14th will be held at the Boeing Center at the Tech Point in San Antonio, including Victory Road. Returning to Fayetteville on Friday and Saturday, November 8th and 9th at the Crown Arena. Center Stage in Atlanta on December 13th and 14th. Shows in Louisville and Spartanburg went on sale. So the Louisville show There was about 3 rows of reserved tickets and then some balcony seating. And then in Spartanburg, a bigger venue, but a modest setup to start out with, about 4 rows deep with 2 rows following it that are dark, and then general admission balcony. So not too ambitious there, but I think they have the room, especially in Spartanburg, to expand that. A bit more about San Antonio. So the Boeing Center at Techport is generally a 3,100 seat venue, but that may be when they're utilizing standing room near the stage, because that's like a big part of what they do. Venue configuration and concert map. So it all like faces the stage. Again, like a big open space and then tiered seating, depending on how you want to set it up. So would they put the ring on the stage? That never works too well. So usually you put it like in the center of the floor, and then you'd have the seats around it, and then maybe some stage seating. Also, on November 29th in Benton Convention Center is TNA appearing at WrestleCade. So outside of Bound for Glory, which looks like it'll be in London, we pretty much know the whole TNA schedule for the rest of the year. And again, it's kind of what you'd expect, right? Where we started to hear at different times that they'd run bigger venues and so on, but it's kind of the same type of markets that they run and the type of setups that you'd expect, which isn't a bad thing. And I think being in the Carolinas multiple times in different cities is a good thing, especially when you have the Hardys, who are newer to TNA. So I'm not sure if they're continue drawing power in the Carolinas. I'm sure it's still strong, but that should help them in those markets.
Good stuff with WrestleCade for sure. That's a big convention down there in North Carolina. What about New Japan? I feel like the Capital Collision show is not drawing too well.
Yeah, so that's the only note I have for New Japan tonight, which is 1,070 tickets distributed, just 28 since the last update 7 days ago. They started ramping up the talent that will appear, and the persons that you would expect. I don't know if they announced any matchups yet. So this style of just like saying like it's New Japan, it will draw in a market that they're in at least once a year, and then saying here are the talents, and a lot of whom are crossing over into AEW already, and then not announcing the matches. It just doesn't seem to be working. Sometimes you'll see things pick up in the 2 weeks prior, but again, just 1,070 tickets distributed of a setup of 2,778, according to WrestleTix.
How about GC Dub? What's going on with GC Dub?
So just a little tidbit that I will credit myself for in terms of their upcoming show in Hawaii at the Convention Center. I found the Hawaii Convention Center events calendar for their November 2nd show, which was known. But it listed actually the attendees, meaning the capacity, since tickets aren't on sale yet. So they're set up for 600, which is about the same that you'd expect. Although I'm curious to see like what shows they do around that, because going to Hawaii for 600 people is a pretty long way. Although they go to Japan for about the same amount, but they're doing teaming with other companies, and they're doing a triple shot this time. So it doesn't mean that they have to have other reasons to be all the way out in Hawaii, like other shows in Asia or in the Pacific or something like that. But it is a pretty long way to go, and they did book it well in advance. So my just speculation is that something is cooking. Next is that you don't always see a state representative tweet about GCW, but Mitch Gore tweeted out, sometimes being your state representative is just fun. This past weekend, Brittany and I attended a GCW wrestling event in the district, headlined and promoted by my friend and constituent Spider Nate Webb, which is cool. So the aforementioned show we talked about in Cleveland on August 2nd, just 367 tickets distributed in a setup of 1,150. They're starting to announce some different talents, some crossover talents like Jinder Mahal, but I'm not sure how much that will lead to greater ticket sales. In LA, they've added a 4th row ringside. 10 or more tickets are available with general admission still available. And looking at Homecoming in Jersey in late August, I would say moving along, but a little bit slow. Just a few 3rd row tickets left, and 4th row ringside is 10 or more. And that's just night 1. There's second night as well. And in Chicago on August 31st, you can still get 6 or more 2nd row seats. So that looks a little bit slow as well.
What is going on with OVW? I feel like this big show in Kentucky is not off to a big start.
John, I feel a little bit bad because I discovered the show and then it was on Ticketmaster and that it was like such a big venue that I'm grateful for WrestleTix for following it and tweeting it out. But when WrestleTix like commented on my post, and then certainly when WrestleTix tracked the numbers a couple of times, people are going banana, as Pat Patterson would say, like just dunking and dunking and dunking on OVW. And like Matt Jones has been so kind to be on our show. Mr. Pictacular's a fan. So like I don't want to not treat OVW well, and I'm sure they could take it, right? But everyone is just fascinated by this venue that they've used the maximum capacity, 6,508 in Pikeville, Kentucky, the Appalachian Wireless Arena. Looks like a cool place. That how can they possibly sell, a decent amount of tickets to make this make sense? We've talked about how, they can do a quarter setup, which ultimately I think that they'll end up doing if they're paying attention, if it's worth their while to do so. But they've just moved 36 tickets since the last update from WrestleTix. Tickets distributed is listed as 417. Again, like I talked about, based on the patterns that I'm noticing, I think it's a lot less than that. So we'll have to see with that. But this Dan O Seasoning Company, seems to, they're sponsoring their national tour. Just meaning that they're in a number of markets. They've been in a number of markets that are outside of their region. So August 10th, they're in Cheswick, Pennsylvania. Let's see where else. They're going to be in Cincinnati on August 16th and August 17th in Warren, Ohio. So those other... Actually, Packard Music Hall in Warren, Ohio. I think that's a bigger venue. So we'll have to check that one out, too. If it's on Ticketmaster, I don't know if I should tag WrestleTix again, although I'd like to track that one, too. But generally, these are smaller venues. But hopefully it's being covered by the sponsorship. I mean, as we talked about, like with WWE and AEW not running a lot of these markets, is worth being ambitious, but to a certain degree.
How about NWA? What is the latest with Kerry Morton, the Crockett Cup, and the NWA?
So a really the nice article in Kerry Morton's hometown paper, the Herald Courier, written by Tim Hayes. And I'm a big Kerry Morton fan. I think he's like the shining light of the NWA. Kerry Morton paired with Alex Terra to win the NWA Jim Crockett Senior Memorial Cup Tag Team Wrestling Tournament recently, and the major achievement held some extra special meaning for the 23-year-old grappler. Morton was born in Bristol, Tennessee, graduated from Sullivan East High School, and later was on the cheerleading squad at King University. Jim Crockett Sr. was a Bristol native, a Virginia High alum, attended King, and briefly played football for the Tornado before entering the promotion game. Yeah, this victory hit a bit different. Bristol is a special place to me, filled with memories and milestones in my life. Sharing the connection with Mr. Crockett is incredibly cool, not only as a wrestler, but a professional wrestling fan. It's an honor to share such significant ties with someone who has had such a profound impact on the world of wrestling. I grew up watching Jim Crockett Promotions footage from back in the 80s. Such a fan of what they have done, and now to have the opportunity to represent small town USA, Bristol, Tennessee. Hope I made Bristol proud. One person very proud is Kerry's father, Ricky. I'm just skipping the bio about him because we know that. Morton was in Kerry's corner during the tournament held at the OC Theater in Fort Wayne, Texas. Winning the Crockett Cup means a lot to me. Kerry said, I've often dreamt about moments like this, and achieving something my father never accomplished is pretty surreal. It's a proud moment for both of us and adds to the legacy of the Morton name in wrestling. Morton's partner topped Sage Chance and Tommy Rant in the first round. Okay, we don't need the results necessarily. Overcoming a huge obstacle was a defining moment. Of course, the last match will always hold a special place in my memory. One of the things which impressed me most about Kerry was his tenacity and ability to adapt during the tournament, Joe Galley said. So a little bit of kayfabe there. Among those in attendance was David Crockett, Jim Crockett Sr.'s son, and a television announcer. So really interesting article. They did note that this Crockett Cup was taped a couple of months ago. So recommend reading that whole article. But NWA 76 in your extended neck of the woods, John, coming up August 31st. They're starting to announce more talent for it, but like Haley J, but still, depending on the area and so on, most of the second row, or at least a portion of the second row available, and maybe most of the third or fourth row still available. So they have a ways to go. The Sam Hain show on October 26th just has a 2-row setup plus general admission. So the first row still has tickets available. And keep looking at this December show at the Dothan Civic Center. I don't think they've moved a lot of tickets since they opened that up, but plenty of time, and they did well there with local publicity and then moving tickets as it got closer to the date.
As far as MLW is concerned, what's going on with them? I know they've got 4 or 5 big shows coming up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to stay on MLW for a little bit of time, kind of like do a semi-dive, not our deepest dive, but a semi-dive, just kind of like get a little flavor for what's going on with them. August 29th in New York, September 14th in Atlanta, October 4th in St. Petersburg, November 9th in Chicago. So the show in New York has, well, they actually have on one of the 4 sides most of the front row left, but a fair amount of tickets have moved if they've been for sale. Somehow where they were trying to like inflate the prices, resell tickets, which caught me by surprise. September 14th in Atlanta, the seats closest to the ring are pretty much sold, but then anything in the risers or in the tiered seating is still available. October 4th in Florida still has some first row tickets available and a fair amount of second and beyond tickets. And in Chicago, there's still front row tickets available too. And some movement beyond that. I'm not sure how many were actually put on sale. So that's their live event. So just looking at like their premium membership on YouTube, which they recently moved to, the standard pass is $7.99. And what does this get you? Loyalty badges next to your name and comments in live chats, custom emoji to use in comments and live chats, early access to new videos, members only live chats, MLW Fusion Library, special event library. So members only library is like MLW Underground, John Hennigan, Hammerstone, Real One, Battle Riot, so on. So like the type of things that have not been in a paywall in the past. So I don't know how appealing that is. You really have to be an MLW super fan. And just looking at their distribution, so we know they're on beIN Sports Extra, the digital tier. They still list Fight, but I think that's no longer. I believe, but they're on YouTube. Then they're on Iozat TV, and Sky 186 in England. They're also on in Africa, or the Star Times, NBC, Wata Fight Channel, which includes a lot of the Middle East, and Fight Club Poland, obviously, in that country. I don't know if any surrounding countries as well. And just looking at the talent, and I don't mean like, this is not a knock on any of the talent, just looking at like the mix of talent that are there. So Satoshi Kojima, who's really a veteran, he has that legacy connection to MLW when it started. Matt Riddle, who this is kind of his home promotion right now when he's not doing kids' birthday parties. I think that was a cute thing. I don't think anyone should knock that. Hopefully he got a good payday for that. You'll see like big musicians and so on do bar mitzvahs and something like that for wealthy families. So that's okay. Mystico, who obviously this isn't his home promotion. Sammy Callahan, Kenta, Mads Kruger, Tom Lawler, who's been in and out, Alex Kane, who seemed to have some momentum, but then lost the belt. Davey Boy Smith is back in. But really, they're getting the most publicity from Paul Walterhauser, who I wasn't familiar with, but apparently is a Hollywood mover and shaker. And then the storyline that they're running the most is who's the father of Selena De La Renta's baby and her feud with Cesar Duran. They had, I think, a couple clips with Don King in, and everyone loves Bill Alfonso. So that's basically where MLW is. John, do you see like do you get like different buzz about MLW still? Like, how do you think it's like increased in the last year?
It's weird. It's like touch and go. Sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's not. I feel like Paul Walter Hauser was definitely getting them some buzz a little bit. The storyline with Selena De La Renta and Cesar Duran was getting a little bit of love. I know Don King at one point was getting them a little bit of love, but I know it's kind of hit or miss. It's like they need to be out there more. Like they need to have a permanent home and a bigger home.
Yeah, it's sort of like, what are the efforts pointing towards if you don't have the right platforms? But hopefully they have a good amount of runway if they're investing whatever the monies that apparently were awarded back into the business, or I'd imagine perhaps there was some sort of payout to the various owners that have been reported. If not now, when? But maybe they still strongly believe in the business and they don't want to take anything out. That's just speculation to know how that would go one way or another.
How about the Juggalos? Juggalo Championship Wrestling.
So just noting that, as we have, that they're out there and doing some interesting things. And Kerry Morton is involved, just like he's involved with the NWA behind the scenes. He's involved with JCW as a performer, but also behind the scenes as well. So a smart move with them. So there's that connection. And they always have a fun collection of talents, but Willie Mack, Officer Colt Cabana, Sammy Callahan, Kerry Morton, as we talked about, Matt Cross, Congo Kong, Danny Moe, and if I recognize all the names, then that speaks well. But just for example, as we're taping this and through the weekend, they're doing a triple shot. Fort Wayne, Indiana, Newport, Kentucky, Pontiac, Michigan. So they'll be around in one form or another, but we have to see how these shows go if they continue increasing the volume.
What's up with the AEW? You've got some AEW news.
Yeah, just a tidbit. We've heard about the WWE success with the championship belt and the replicas. So this AEW one seems like a lot lower profile, but if there's a space in the market to do it and interest, why not? AEW and the Southland Conference have announced that AEW will provide a custom branded AEW SLC Championship belt to the winners of various upcoming Southland Conference tournaments across multiple sports. As part of the announcement, Dax and Cash will have a special message for the SLC on Southland Football Opening Drive, which aired on ESPN Plus. The AEW SLC belt presentation will take place at every SLC championship event. Southland was founded in 1963 and comprises 12 schools within a driving range of the state of Louisiana and Texas. John, you're more of a sports guy. I never heard of Southland Conference. Are you familiar with it?
I'm actually not, surprisingly. I'm not familiar with it at all.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a condemnation of the Southland, but neither of us have heard of it. So more investigation is necessary.
When you're looking at like championship belts and stuff, WWE still can't sell Jacksonville Jaguar belts, correct? That was pulled?
Right, but I don't know. I don't know if they couldn't, but or like if somebody said like we're not going to, or maybe Jacksonville said like not ours. I don't know. Like when the NFL does a deal that involves all the teams, like is there the opportunity to for an owner to say not us, or for a licensee to say everything but, or maybe it was just agreed upon. But I don't think like in terms of selling it for commerce, I don't think that AEW would be able to say like we have a Jacksonville Jaguar belt for sale. That's sort of like maybe that's already like WWE has that license. But if the Jaguars were to win the Super Bowl, I think there wouldn't be a problem of them like giving them an AEW championship belt to hold up or something.
Right. Instead of a WWE belt, which they normally do. Yep.
Yes.
Now, speaking of WWE, what is going on with WWE? SummerSlam and big tryout, I guess.
Yeah, so this is just like WWE continuing to maximize profits and opportunity, right? They talk about all the different events that they have and that they sell to a city, and now that included for WrestleMania, Undertaker's one man. I don't know if you call it a stand-up routine, one man show or interview, whatever it was. But here now, when they tend to run tryouts in cities, they're going to charge tickets for fans to go, a priority pass, and I think that's a smart idea. I assume WWE doesn't charge people that try out to try out, unlike a lot of wrestling companies in the past and the present. So that's a cost for them, so they can either defray the cost or make money by charging fans to attend. And secondly, it's smart because if you encourage the fans to react to how people are doing, you can see how they do under pressure, right? Sometimes you have experienced workers that are coming in. Other times they're just inviting athletes that they feel have potential. I think Evander Holyfield's son is one of them. I'm not sure if this is when he's trying out or what that story is, but like if somebody tries something out and they mess up and everyone boos them or heckles them, you can see how they react. Can they not handle it? Whatever it may be. So it's a good time to test people. You don't want to test people too much, in that sort of experience. But I think like there's a couple positives about doing something like this right away.
Very interesting stuff. Just as far as the tryouts, because the one that they did last year was on Roku. So I wonder if how public it will be, because obviously the public would then know who was eliminated and everything. And the show on Roku was who's going to be eliminated each week, the drama of it all. So be wondering if it'll be done in the same way, in the same light, or how much the fans that are there will actually see, or maybe even have to sign off on, not spilling the beans on some of the stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But as you're talking about it having been serialized in some point already, then there's the risk of like trying to bring in like a ringer and have them win, and then like you can use the footage, or maybe somebody does like with an audience there, somebody does something like staged out of the ordinary, and then like be like this person's unhinged and have them attack a couple plant fans in the audience and so on. I'm already booking the tryout, so
yeah,
you never know. Whatever you see isn't necessarily reality, right? In front of you.
Yes. All right, Lavi, a lot of news this week, a lot of different viewpoints as far as a lot of promotions, a lot of leagues. Tubi could be getting hot again, which is very cool. WB is announcing more shows, more dates coming up, which everybody should keep their eye on as well. But let's hit the plugs and head towards the finish. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Lavi, what do you got?
Follow me on X at Lavie Marg, LAVIE MARG. We are the official business podcast of PW Ponderings. We're distributed by the Creative Control Network. And check out our LinkedIn group, The Business of the Business.
All right. Thank you, Alavi. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. See you right back here next week for a little business of the business. We'll see you next week, folks.